Hello, yoga teachers who both root and rise. Root to Rise is the intersection between self-inquiry, rooting, and teaching extraordinary yoga classes, rising. Welcome. My name is Sherry Fisher. I'm one of the founders of Root to Rise. The Root to Rise yoga teaching method bridges the gap between your 200-hour yoga teacher training and teaching extraordinary yoga classes, no matter how much experience you have. So if you are a yoga teacher who has something to share or something to learn, you are in the right place, and I am glad you're here. One of the things that we found in our research for the book, Standing Room Only, How to Be That Yoga Teacher, is that a lot of yoga teachers have a lack of confidence. That's one of the biggest obstacles that they face. And this is particularly true for new or newer yoga teachers, but I think it can hit any of us anywhere along our yoga teaching journey. So who better to talk about how to build confidence than somebody who is an expert in human behavior and also in brain development? My guest today is Dr. Melissa Lopez-Larson, and she is a psychiatrist who takes a holistic approach to treating the whole person. So I'd like to bring Dr. Melissa in so we can talk about building confidence. Welcome, Melissa. As you just heard, I was telling them that a lot of the new and newer yoga teachers, but really all yoga teachers, have one big obstacle, which is a lack of confidence. And what I like to think about is what could we do as people with more confidence? And then how might that show up in our yoga teaching practice? So my question to you is, what are some ways that we can build our confidence levels? Oh, you're muted.
Well, thank you so much actually for having me, Sherry. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of my tools of the trade for increasing confidence. And I think we can use confidence in any aspect of our life, not just for yoga teachers, but I teach a lot of confidence in my parenting programs. And I think we just need confidence in general throughout our life, whether it be career or family or even hobbies. One of the things that, well, there's a couple of different key things that I feel are extraordinarily important to build confidence. They include, building a knowledge base and practicing with a mindset of specific intentions on how you want to improve. I think one of the things we've probably all heard of is this: you have to, do something 10,000 hours in order to be proficient and expert. And I actually would say we actually want to have more quality practice, not quantity of practice. And so some people say, well, what does that mean? Well, I always stress making sure you're extraordinarily mindful when you practice. Know what you're going to be practicing, and maybe focus on one area that you want to focus on per practice that you're utilizing. And I like to give an example of golf because I've had some coaching in golf myself, and I'm still okay at it. But I have this really amazing coach. Golf coach who really helped me say, when we do our practicing golf, we don't just go to the driving range and start hitting balls. Like every time we go hit a ball, we have an intention, we set up the same way, and we practice one little piece of our golf swing at a time. And so every practice, we have an intention, and we're practicing it as if we're actually in the game, that we're actually going to be playing golf that day. So every swing has to be with intent. And it really does cut down how many times you got to practice, actually. And so it's much more about the quality of the practice. The other thing that I stress for individuals is visualization and imagery work can be extraordinarily helpful. Just sitting down, meditating about it, just thinking it through, because our brains learn through visualization as well. And if I'm thinking about golfing and if I just visualize the perfect swing over and over, I actually will start developing that without actually having to practice, which to me is awesome because I don't have lots of time sometimes. Another thing
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And the last thing that I really stress for individuals is you get a coach, you get a mentor, get somebody who actually knows a lot about what you're trying to be proficient in. And I'm assuming since they're taking your course, that's exactly what they're doing. But coaches really help us to, identify our strengths, the areas that we need to work on, and then most importantly, help us set goals and hold us accountable, which I think is always really important because we all can maybe set our own goals, but it's that accountability piece that's really important.
So, a couple of things that you said that I'd like to touch on is the practicing and the quality of the practicing. When I was younger, I was a musician and I played the piano. And my parents would say, you need to practice 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And my form of practice was to sit down and play music, just play the song, play the song, play the song. And my parents would say, no, it's you need to take the couple of measures that are really hard for you and slow them down and play them over and over again. Well, that was kind of boring to me. But I think it goes along with what you're saying is if I'm just speeding through that part and sort of blurring over the fact that I'm not getting all the notes or I don't have the exact rhythm, I'm doing practicing for the sake of getting my 30 minutes in rather than making it an intentional practice so that it actually makes a difference in what I'm doing. And my dad used to say he would say it's not practice that makes perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And what he meant was exactly what you were saying. If we are intentional when we are doing our practicing, we're going to get a lot more out of it. And then also your comment about you were talking about visualization. Visualization. What I've heard, and you're a psychiatrist, so you know this if this is true or not, is that our brain sometimes can't really tell if our body is doing what we are imagining it doing. So we can actually learn and we can experience practicing if we're using that visualization in our minds and we're using the power of our strongest muscle, which is our mind and our brain, to do the practicing. So I really think that those are some good points. Do you have anything else you'd like to comment on that?
Well, I mean, I think if you think about, I mean, our brain controls our body. And so it all starts there. And so if we train our brain will tell our body what to do. And,
Yeah.
we do practice with our bodies a lot, and that does teach our brain, but it works both ways and they're interconnected. So
Yes.
being able to do practice with your mind mentally and with your body physically really kind of exponentially increases your ability to learn faster.
Yes, and I really liked too what you said about mentoring and coaching because we can learn so much from someone who's been down the path before, work with a more experienced yoga teacher, get feedback from them. And what I've found in my coaching practice, the accountability piece is probably the most important part because then it takes what you're saying into what you're doing. And that to me is what creates the progress forward.
Exactly.
So, let me say one thing to our yoga teacher viewers. Just so you know, we have created a handout, and the link to the handout of all of the points that Melissa is talking about today will be included in that. So, it includes contact information for Dr. Melissa and then all of these tips that she has put together for us about building your confidence. So, please go and download that, and that way you don't have to sit here and take notes. You can actually enjoy the interview and then go back and refresh with the handout. So, Dr. Melissa, another thing I think that pops up, especially for me with my confidence, is that negative voice in my head. And I've heard a lot about it called imposter syndrome. Please talk to me about imposter syndrome. What is it and how does it affect our confidence levels?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, imposter syndrome is one of the bane of most of our existence sometimes. So, for some reason, we get in our head, despite adequate training and the intentional practice and developing all these skills, we still feel we're just not adequate enough to be doing this job or this whatever we're working on. And to me, that's a more of a mindset issue. It's a negative core belief about ourselves that we often have to challenge, and we have to challenge it very aggressively. Um, so, one of the things that I'll tell people is if you notice that you're having these thoughts, write them down and then write a rebuttal right next to it. Tell yourself, look, I have so and so years of experience, this many hours of training, this much knowledge. I'm probably in the 1% or less than that of all the people who know about, say, yoga. So I am really an expert. And, you just have to kind of just have those rebuttals ready. And if there's others that pop up, have a rebuttal ready so that you can immediately turn it down and turn it off. Because again, if we think about the brain as a muscle and we give some of our negative thoughts power, it strengthens those brain networks to then be a very powerful voice in our head. But when we immediately start shutting it down, it gets weaker and weaker and weaker, and eventually it'll go away.
Atrophy. I like that. I like that a lot. And I do
Negative atrophy of negative thoughts would be great.
get rid of them. Well,
Get
and I
rid of
do
them.
think it can be a downward spiral because one negative thought can lead to the second one, and pretty soon it's huge in your head. Why you may or may not be able to teach this yoga class, and you've pretty much talked yourself out of it. And I've worked with my coaching clients in that same way, and sometimes I'll even have them describe if this saboteur is what we called it in my coaching training. It was a person, what would it look like? And they would describe how this person looked and what they talked like, and then writing them a letter or really like talking to them. What would you say to this person who looks just like what you said in this personification that you've done to talk back to them? Why is it not true? Because sometimes I need to hear that. I need to be reassured that no, I have a lot of training and I am ready to teach this yoga class. And I do know enough and more than everybody in the class to teach a good yoga class. So I really like those techniques. And I think one other thing for me that comes up is comparing myself to others. And we the name of our book is Standing Room Only, How to Be That Yoga Teacher. And it could imply a different person. But I think what it is the that we are referring to is the image or the desire that you have to be the yoga teacher you want to be. So talk to me a little bit about comparison and competition.
Well, that is a big issue, I think, for a lot of people, and we all kind of get stuck in that. Um, and I think it's a really it doesn't help us to compare ourselves to others because, quite frankly, we're all individual, we're unique, and we are supposed to be that way. We all bring our special gifts and talents to whatever we're teaching or practicing. And I think people really, you don't want to always be comparing yourself to somebody else. You want to kind of figure out how you are unique and different and talented in a different way. But again, if you find yourself doing a lot of comparison or competition, again, you got to work on that mindset and to say, you know what, I'm not looking to be this wonderful person who's doing it. I'm looking to be a wonderful yoga instructor in a different way. And I think it's very challenging to do because we always say, geez, I could do that, or geez, I wish I looked like that, or gee, I wish I had that much experience. But you are perfectly perfect just the way you are. And we all have to recognize that we are all different and we're supposed to be. And that's what makes the world so beautiful and so diverse. And we need that diversity in our teaching, in our trainings, in our practices, so that we can really reach those people that need a different type of experience.
And I think that relates to the third pillar of powerful teaching, which is connection. And one of the foundations of connection, we talk about connection with students and the community at large and your fellow teachers. But the core of that is connection with yourself. And it's understanding yourself so that you aren't trying to be like that other person or compare yourself to that other person because you know who you are or you're on a continual path to explore who you are. And that's that connection that we're talking about. And then that then dims the light on comparison and competition because you're you. And we want our yoga teachers to find their own voice as a yoga teacher. And it may be a blend of what you've learned in other teachers' classes, but we want you to put it on you because I used to work in the dress department, and the dresses look completely different depending on who had it on because we're all different. So, what is your voice as a yoga teacher, not compared to anybody else? And then Melissa, one other thing that I sometimes can struggle with is perfectionism. Like the thought is if it's not 100% ready, then it's not ready to put it out yet. And that can stop people from even trying something new because if it's not perfect, it goes to zero. So talk to me about perfectionism and how we can maybe shift our mindset around that.
Well, and we all kind of know this intellectually, but we all have to recognize that there is no such thing as perfection. There is none. Because what's perfect to me is not perfect to Sherry, which is not perfect to anybody else. Um, and there's no way to actually even get close to perfect though if you don't start. And you're right, perfectionism is like a major roadblock. And I see this in so many avenues of life is if we don't feel like we can be good and successful and perfect, we don't even try. And to me, that is the failure, not making a mistake, because we learn from our mistakes. I can't tell you how many mistakes I've made over my life, and I still have be, and I have a great career, and but that's part of the learning process. And we have to push ourselves, challenge ourselves, work through that kind of, again, that little negative thought back there, and be curious about mistakes, welcome mistakes. Know that this is part of the journey to being a great yoga teacher or whatever your passion is, and kind of push through it. But I have to sometimes remind myself every day, I'm like, this is good enough, and I'm going to see what happens. It's going to be good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just got to be okay.
My
Let's set
husband,
the bar low.
my husband had 32 years in the military. He recently retired, and he would talk to me. He'd say, "Sherry, you have about a 95% solution, meaning I have to have all the pieces in line and know exactly what questions might come out." And he said, "Go with a 75% solution. That's what we learn in the military. So if you have about 75% of your pieces in line, make a decision, move forward, and know and trust yourself that you have the capacity to adjust along the way." And just as you said, it's our failures or our mistakes that teach us how to continue down our path of whatever it is that we're trying to reach with our goals. And so I do think that 75% solution is a really good one. And another teaching tip that I got when I first started teaching floor aerobics. So I have done group exercise for a long time, been a teacher. And somebody told me, they said, the sign of a professional is somebody who makes a mistake and continues on with ease and grace, because we are human and we will make mistakes. So let's say you forget a pose on one side or the other, and you can come back to it, you can decide not to go back to it, but the fact is that it happened, and then you move on, and it's okay. Your students will not die if they didn't get side angle on the second side. They truly will not. So I think that's really good in the area of perfectionism, and also compassion for yourself. It's okay to make mistakes. That is how we learn. And sometimes too, and I think you and I have talked about this, it's kind of funny. It's one of those stories that you can tell later. It's like, and then this is what happened, and then this other thing happened. So have a sense of humor. Is there anything more that you would like to share on building confidence, and any other stories you'd like to share, or any other tips you'd like to provide?
I think, just kind of piggybacking off what you just said, sometimes if you're struggling to have change your mindset or get past perfectionism, or worried about imposter syndrome, I want you to imagine what you would say to your best friend if they were sitting in your chair, or imagine that little girl or little boy. Would you tell them they had to be perfect at age 8 or 9 when they're just trying something out and learning a new skill? So, again, compassion, reflection, and treat yourself as kindly as you would anybody else, because we tend to be, unfortunately, our own worst enemies, and nobody is ever going to be a bigger critic than ourselves. And so sometimes when I feel my inner critic coming up, I remember, what would I say to my best friend if she just said exactly what I just said, or if my daughter said that? And that really helps me reframe my thoughts.
Because we can be nasty to ourselves and
Yes.
speak to ourselves without compassion, and that for me, that lowers my confidence level rather than raises my confidence level. And I wouldn't talk to a child. I would not say nasty things to them. I would encourage them and say, that happens, and this happened to me at one point, and here's what happened after that. And it's just, how would you talk to somebody else and reframe that so that you're speaking to yourself with that same kindness and compassion as well. So, Dr. Melissa, this is where I usually, with our viewers, I give them what I call a coaching challenge. And I was wondering if you had a couple of ideas. And the coaching challenge is to help them take something that we've talked about today and apply it and integrate it into their own personal lives, or maybe even a way to share with their students if they're teaching a class. So, what would be a coaching challenge that you might offer?
A couple one come to mind. I think one of the ones that I always think of is when we talk about one of our first tips about a mindful practice. I want you to pick one thing in your practice that you really want to work hard on, and just focus on that one piece of it. so that you know exactly what you need to focus on, you know the goals, and you want to be able to measure the outcome in some way. And so again, just breaking those pieces down into something specific and intentional to work on. That would be probably my first one to start with. I have a couple others though as well I could leave you with.
Well, let me jump in here. So in my coaching practice, I call these baby steps, and I think one of the things that can bust my confidence is if I take too big of a bite, and I'm expecting a lot out of myself, and I want to get from step 1 to step 10 in 1 week, when it's much better if I go from step 1 to step 2 and take it in bite-sized chunks. And so I do think that those baby steps are really, really important. So why don't you give us at least one or two more ideas, and for you as the yoga teachers, see what Dr. Melissa is talking about that lands with you. That's something that you are willing to take that baby step and move it forward today, this week, and maybe even in your next yoga class that you're teaching.
So another one that you could think about is to pay attention to those thoughts, those kind of negative, critical thoughts. Pick one and write a rebuttal.
Yes.
And just write it down, every reason why that thought is not true.
And I would say too, read it over, because when I have read it and even reading it out loud, what my ears hear is somebody is finally standing up for me. Oh, it's me. I'm standing up for me. And so it's like, state your case, talk back. And I think that builds your strength, and it also builds your confidence.
Absolutely.
And anything else you'd like to add for us? I love these assignments. Go ahead.
Well, and I think the last tip is just making sure that you experience joy in what you're doing. If you're in a yoga profession, make sure you make it fun and joyful as often as you can. And, try to be silly, make fun. You want to project confidence, but you want to project that you enjoy what you're doing, that you love it, and that it brings you joy. And to me, that's kind of like the icing on the cake, so to speak, when you have a teacher who's passionate and joyful in their practice and what they're teaching.
And I think students can feel that. We talk about that in the third pillar of powerful teaching, connection, where I'm talking about intuition and how to tune into your intuitive voice. And I think when we feel that passion, that desire, that resonance within, that to me is my intuition saying, yes, this is something that's really good for you. It's important. You are doing what you're supposed to be doing right now. And then the other thing that came to mind, and I use this as one of my themes for one of my yoga classes, was WTF. And my son was home for the weekend, and I asked him, what do you do for fun? And so he was telling me, and he said, but I'm a pretty serious person. And he said, Mom, what do you do for fun? And I said, I kind of have the same thing. I like work a lot. I love what I do. So we came up with WTF, which is, where's the fun? So notice where the fun is in your teaching and bring it in. So WTF. So Dr. Melissa, it has been such a pleasure to have you here with us. And I wanted to see where the viewers here, but also you reach a couple of different audiences. And I think confidence is a key theme in the work that you do. How can people get more information from you?
Yeah, well, they can always go to my website, which is www.drlsquared.com. So I have a lot of information about courses and my practice and some of my integrative approaches to wellness. But particularly confidence, I also have a Facebook group that's called Confident Parenting Successful Kids, where I teach parents how to be confident parents. So I use a lot of things that we talked about today, and it's a free Facebook group. It's private, but it's there to support parents, give them some tips of the trade, help them kind of manage challenges, and we have fun Fridays where we post hilarious parent memes, again, just to have some fun with parenting, because that's what it's all about.
My kids are grown up. That doesn't mean I've outgrown what you are talking about there, because I love being out there, and parenting just changes. Even when they're not in the house, I'm still their parent.
You're always a parent.
And you always need confidence as a parent.
Yes, you do.
I invited my sister to your Facebook group, and she read one post and she said, "This is absolutely the place I need to be." So I encourage you to go and check out the Facebook group that Dr. Melissa was just talking about. And I think the other thing too, we have a Facebook group, the Yoga Teacher Gathering Space. And I think one of the other key things about these groups is the connectedness and the support, knowing that there are other people out there who are going through something similar, and they're there energetically supporting you. So, and that information also to get a hold of Dr. Melissa and her website, it's on the handout. So please go ahead and download that handout and go and find this information on Dr. Melissa and also on the tips that she gave us today. Thank you so much, Dr. Melissa. I so appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a joy to talk with you, Sherry.
I feel the same way. Thank you. All right. So there you have it, Dr. Melissa Lopez-Larson, full of really good information and so applicable the way she describes it. And I hope that you will take one of our coaching challenges. So we bring you these interviews to help you build your knowledge and, of course, build your confidence so you feel better and can teach better yoga classes and take those basic classes and turn them into extraordinary yoga classes, no matter how much experience you have. If you'd like to get your hands on our book, Standing Room Only, How to Be That Yoga Teacher, check out the link that's in the show notes, and you can download that. In the book, Standing Room Only, we talk about the 5 pillars of powerful teaching, which is communication, character, connection, commitment, and consideration. And I think that confidence is probably one of those C's, and it's the foundation so those pillars stand strong on your yoga teaching journey. Also, please join us in our Facebook group, the Yoga Teacher Gathering Space, where we talk about all things yoga and we root and rise together in our quest to become better yoga teachers. We'll see you soon.